So today we're going to be playing some PlayStation on this Samsung TV. And before we go any further, this is not a real TV. I'll show you what a real TV is supposed to look like. Ah, there you are. Now you might be looking at the title of today's video and be wondering, what? Hello, this is a TV. What are you talking about? Well, let me explain. A 90s Toyota Corolla is old, it works, doesn't have any fancy features. This is old, it works, it doesn't have any fancy features. In fact, take a look at the remote. This has a TV/AV button, but this TV doesn't have anything else apart from the antenna input. So this is literally just built to a cost, but it works. And if you describe this as a TV, that's more than enough to describe what it does, because that's literally all it does.
It's a car!
But this is a real TV because it does what it's supposed to do, and it has all of this fancy technology inside to make picture glow on screen. Before we continue too far with this TV, let me just explain. The point of today's video is not to be a complete overview about every single aspect of this TV. However, if you guys do want to see something like that in the future, then let me know in the comments below or leave a thumbs up on today's video. We're going to power this beast up and we're going to plug some things in here to see how well this picture works. You might also be thinking that, well, what's the point in having one of these when they're old, they're bulky, they don't have a high resolution image, and there are modern replacements that are 10 times as big as this one is? Well, this still works, and I don't know how many TVs built nowadays would still work in 20 years time. This was actually made in '99, and even though it was manufactured to a low cost price, this by means is nowhere near the price or even the quality of a higher end set from the time, but it still works. And there's a lot of different things that go on in CRTs. They're not exactly easy things to manufacture. However, this was made around the time when things got pretty good. Things also got to the point where they were easy to manufacture, lower cost, even when you consider the fact that these things are pretty complex devices. It'll probably need maintenance if you want to keep it going, especially if you use this often. And of course, the CRT, once that gives out, then, well, you can't exactly use this unless you somehow find a replacement tube. Even after 20 plus years, it still works. So why don't we take a look at this thing? It's a broke Sonic. I'm not saying that this is bad, but this isn't like a Sony or a JVC or anything like that. It's a broke Sonic. I mean, who wouldn't want to have a broke Sonic? I mean, like I said, TV AV button. This was probably used for another model that had one, and it was just thrown in with this because it's easier to manufacture. There's no front input here, and that's all you get on the back. Good old coaxial input. This is probably the same chassis that was used on other sets as well, considering the fact that there's a lot of space here and there's nothing there. But you do get this fancy antenna holder. Unfortunately, we are at the point where analog TV is long gone. I guess in that sense you can consider this non-functional anymore. However, you're not limited by the antenna. Plug something else into the back, like a VCR or a PlayStation maybe. So what are we thinking? Some PS1 here? Good old PlayStation here with a late 90s TV? Or how about we skip that and go directly to Y2K with the PS2 here? Or how about we skip that directly and go to a PS3? Now you might be wondering, what? Yeah, exactly. We're going to be playing some PS3 on a TV that was probably meant to be thrown out by the time this thing was released. So let's go ahead and do that. The way we're going to do that is through the AV multi-out port. But you might be wondering as well, how are you going to plug this in if this doesn't even have standard composite? The other end to it, it's an RF adapter. Official Sony component that solves all of the problems here, and I can literally play any one of these consoles on any one of these types of TVs where they only have RF. Now, it doesn't work on a newer console because the PS3, of course, has that AV multi-output jack, and that's why we're able to use the coax adapter with it, because it still retains that functionality. Alright, so we got power plugged in. Now we just have to plug in the PlayStation, and we won't be needing the antenna. So we'll plug this into the TV directly, and if we really wanted to, if this was still the analog days, we could just take our antenna and plug it directly into here. And of course, that really won't do anything nowadays, but Yeah, I mean, we can still do it. So everything's hooked up. Now we just have to power it up. All right, now it's time to live like it's 2009 again and turn on the television.
Nice, you starts no worries. You know what I mean?
So we have the good old snow there, channel 3. So let's go ahead and start off gaming with Portal 2. Of course, another Valve classic. We love our Valve content on this channel. So I'm actually going to reboot the game real quick because you might notice that the lights are still on. And I'm going to show you what a difference it makes when the only light is the actual CRT illuminating. So you can definitely notice that this is an RF signal because there's a lot of noise here. I'm sure that there's a way to get an even better picture with this. But if we focus the camera on the screen itself, it honestly isn't that bad of an image, considering this is not exactly a high-end set. So we're in complete darkness, except for the CRT. It might just be Portal 2, but it honestly looks really good on this CRT. If it wasn't for the noise in the image, this is actually a really good CRT in itself. And I know there's ways you can modify these, and you can add composite input, component input, whatever. I know there's modifications you can do on CRTs, but I don't mind RF if it's done in a good way. Like I said, it is a bit noisy, but let's just hop into a game real quick and let's see how much it actually affects performance. All right, loading into a game, and we're in. This is pretty early on in the game, but this is just an old save that was on the PlayStation. I haven't played PlayStation in a while. It's always fun to play it on a CRT. And yeah, there of course are ways you can just use the normal composite input, or if you have a CRT that happens to have component, then you're basically up to HDMI at that point. But again, this is standard RF, and if you're just playing the game like this, it honestly isn't that bad. Would I want to play on it like this all the time? It depends. Maybe if it's on either a bigger display, a bigger CRT of course, or if it's just being run through composite to free up some of the noise, then it's actually not that bad of a display to use. So we got the cube here. Of course, we'll zoom in on it. And when you have it zoomed in, the lighter portions here don't really look noisy at all either. It's mainly just in darker background areas. So if you have well, I guess this one isn't exactly a great example, but in a brighter environment, this actually looks pretty good. So we got the cube, and then we got to get to the other side. We'll jump through here, and actually, why did I do that? Episode 1 of Half-Life. Not Half-Life, this is Portal. Episode 1 of the Portal Let's Play series. Off to a fantastic start. And we're out. So I'm going to put it up on the screen. I quickly captured what the text itself looks like on this display. That's the one downside about lower resolutions on CRTs in general. For images, they can look fantastic, and that's why PC monitors that are CRTs are specifically designed to be higher resolution, so that way you can more easily read text. These TVs are more suited for images, such as playing a VHS tape, DVD movie, or in this place you're playing Portal 2 on a PlayStation 3. But we're doing it anyways because we can. And this text actually looks pretty good, but it's pretty large in comparison. the one that was on screen earlier were the subtitles, and you can clearly see that there is some blurring between the lines. But apart from that, this display is pretty good. I honestly didn't really intend to pick a game that would fit so well with the display, but this looks exactly like something out of Aperture Laboratories, especially on a CRT like this.
All right, going on 3 just gives you too much time to think about it. Let's go on 1 this time. Okay, ready? 1. Catch me, catch. Ow. Ow.
Stop talking. If you take a look at his character model, it shows off pretty... Come on, man. It shows off pretty well on the display itself, and the blue on the CRT itself is actually pretty cool as well.
Not turn it on. Here.
I think we're going to stop with Portal 2 for now, and let's move on to another game. Now we're really experiencing 2010. So here's some really small text that otherwise would be pretty good on a high definition display, obviously. You can still barely just read the text here, but it's definitely much blurrier in comparison to something that is at least composite or higher. So I have played these games before on higher resolution displays, higher resolution CRTs, as well as LCDs. This has a similar feeling to the higher resolution CRTs, obviously. The noise itself definitely does not make it easy. Oh, there you are. Here's another quick example of overall RF video quality. So if you take a look at the Netflix logo here, it's a square, as it should be. However, if you look down here, the prime one has a hint of green on the right side, and the blue on the left side has the same dot crawl issue that is often found on RF and composite video signals. And while it can be noticeable, it's not exactly terrible because, well, not everything has this typically. If it's your only input, then it's RF. You can't really go anything beyond that. But it's fun to use because, well, it's a nice step back from HD video and just everything being HD all of the time. Because, well, you can't really replicate RF either. But it certainly makes the image look a lot better than it would on an LCD. Even if you only have RF on something like this, it's not a bad option. And it's always fun to mess around by jumping from RF to composite to component to whatever video input. Let's take a look at video now. I mean, that's what a TV is meant for. I gotta say, again, apart from the video noise, this set performs like a normal CRT. It might not be 4K Ultra HD, but it has a really responsive display which makes video really smooth. Plus, there's no input lag on anything displayed. YouTube compression is going to have a field day with this video, mainly because the video noise from the RF connection. Apart from that though, the camera manages to get a pretty accurate representation of how the screen is supposed to look. Even with a lower resolution display, it's still noticeable when the video isn't HD, at least when it comes to YouTube or streaming something, since the digital pixelation would show up. Though, if you're watching a DVD, VHS, or any sort of format like that, then pixelation wouldn't even be an issue. Final thoughts on this? Well, even though modern TVs can sometimes have an RF input, although some of those don't even have that anymore, if you're using analog RF on a large flat screen, the picture would be, let's just say that composite would be HD in comparison. On here though, it really does make RF manageable. This specific RF tuner does seem to be a bit noisier than other TVs I've tried out before in the past, but considering the low-end nature of this set, it could be worse. Would I recommend a budget type of set like this when you could get something much better? Obviously, if space is an issue, then it's probably not ideal. But if you've got a fancy higher end set, then also having a lower end one like this is pretty cool. It's fun to use with older devices, but of course you'd also need equipment to be able to display something on these older TVs. If you do already have top of the line hardware from the 90s and 2000s, or you just dislike RF video in general, give a set like this a chance. It might look like a cheap TV, and to an extent it is, but it's got a certain charm that you just don't see on an expensive equivalent because those are much better with all of that extra circuitry to make the tube work. This broke Sonic isn't going anywhere, and even though I don't use it all of the time, it's always fun to go from one CRT to another. If you enjoyed today's video, then consider leaving a thumbs up, and if you want to see more videos like this, then consider subscribing to the channel. But that's going to be it for today's video, and as always, thank you very much for watching.